happy to see all of your smiles today and to be in person. Last year I did this remotely. I had just had esophageal surgery, and so it really wasn't quite the same experience, and I'm really thrilled to be here with all of you. You know, one of the things, so obviously my name is Jessica Mara. I lead our global communities at Lenovo across 3 of our key segment areas, so gaming, education, and SMB. And we've got some partners that we work with in the audience, and we're just super thrilled because we view community as being really just a collaboration of all kinds of talent. I do have a team around the globe, and so we're going to talk a little bit about talent too. But I wanted to get us started a little bit today around community everywhere. And before we do that, I wanted to tell you my 2 from today's keynote after lunch. So I really loved this. Did everyone attend the keynote at lunch? Raise your hands. Okay, fantastic. So my 2 are, what makes me happy is my wife. I got married a year ago, and really love her, and it's just been, we're just having a great time. So I'm very much enjoying that. And the thing that is definitely giving me a little bit of professional angst, so to speak, would be community everywhere. And so this is going to be a really honest conversation, a really open conversation. I am by no means an expert in community everywhere. Richard Millington did that yesterday. He's got this. You guys all have this. But I do think we need to have a conversation about it because I think it has a lot of impact to how we scale, how we look at community. And I'm really interested in what you all think about it. And kind of what we'd like to do is walk away with some ideas on what it means to you and defining that. And then what you think you're gonna, how and if you will implement it going forward. Sound good? All right. So let's get started. So we're definitely gonna talk a little bit about how community builders take the concept of community everywhere and apply it to our own community. We just covered that. There's several different areas that I think are really important, and we've all done this. We do this all the time. But taking it to community everywhere, how are you gonna internally sell this concept? What does that look like? How do you shift your team talent? So if you have a team, if you have people who help you, if you have stakeholders in the equation that are here, how are they going to accommodate this concept of community everywhere? What does that mean? What does that mean for the infrastructure we've all built? And then how do you validate that business case for moving toward that North Star, if it's your North Star? And I really want to emphasize that. It's not everybody's North Star. It's just not. And then discuss the focus of online platforms versus in-person or hybrid. And then again, how does that change things overall? All right, so I'm going to start here, talk to you a little bit about how at Lenovo we think of things in 3 key segments. We look at people for what's interesting to them, not just that they need a laptop or they need a service from us or they need a workstation or they need a phone, but also what do they do in their lives and how do we think of them outside of transaction? And that's really where community came from. In worldwide e-commerce, it was the vision of our leader, Ajit Savadasan, really around how we meet people in a space that's not just around you need a laptop, you come to us, you look at text and specs, and you leave, and then you go on in your world. But really, what does it mean to you? So that's part of the vision, is how we look at expanding that growth globally and how we do it in a really intentional way. And how do we take Lenovo.com as the digital space and move it into a destination, right? And so where we play is one of the things that we looked at. So we've talked about these 3 key segments. Gamers are definitely a very big part of what we do. It's our largest community. Students is still growing. I would say it still feels like it's a harder one to hit. And I've spent a long time in ed tech, and I think that the space is really geared toward educators rather than students necessarily. Plus, we don't tackle COPA compliance, so we only market to people over 18. And then also our SMB audience, which is actually our largest, our small and medium businesses. That's the acronym we use if you're not familiar with it. And we are global. So we have several Harvard Business case studies that have been done around Lenovo and supply chain and all the fun things that go along with being a global company that's successful in its business. And this area, this new opportunities part, this is really where we look to expand and really where community came from. And when we move into the thought of community everywhere, this slide's going to matter. But for now, I just wanted to give you an idea of where I'm coming from with this, which is, building brand loyalty and advocacy from our community members, providing them with something of value and not selling to them, because that's not really what we're doing. But we look at how we optimize those things. These are all our D2C. I would say loyalty and conversion are really the two spaces where our communities live. Our community growth as an overall has been largely organic. We call it through O&O, or owned and operated, SEO, emails, things we own, not things we pay for. So we actually don't have growth based on demand generation. And there's another test case within Lenovo of communities, and they've done some of this really successfully. But in our case, we're doing it organically. And so that kind of shows people are there, they want to be there, they want to stay. When we have had about a 2% spend toward our communities and growth, ad spend, demand gen, anything that we've done with it, it's not been anything that's really created that stickiness that we want within community, and so we've kind of left it at bay. But in this innovate space, and we look at community everywhere, this is where community falls. We do a ton of testing and learning. We do create those partnerships, but that's where it is. And so the thought and the idea of community everywhere falls into this space because it's the next iteration of innovation if you choose to look at your community that way. And then how do we enable it? And these are all the different ways in which we distribute our model, our channels. Okay, this is how we've all been validating community. Probably most of you, does this look familiar to you? Raise of hands. You look at how many registered members you have. These are not our actual metrics. They may or may not be higher than this, but this is what corporate comms maybe put on here. So this is what we're doing. So think of general idea here. So you've got your new and registered men, your global interactions, your average MAU, your platform features. We're really excited. We just brought Bevy on board. Our community is fully integrated, so we can kind of track and see who's buying what, when, what does that mean to them in their lives. Trackpoint Defender is a gamification game. It's kind of like Space Invaders. We put that in our Lenovo Pro community this year in Japan. And then we have loyalty turned on. So you come into the community, you do a thing, you get points, you can redeem them on .com for purchases. Pretty much what that is. But all of this is how we've all been looking at community. How many events have we run? How many pieces of UGC do we have? How much of this is actually usable UGC? What do we count in that bucket? Our average return visitor rate. And that's not far off, by the way, I just want to say. I'm very proud of that. But overall, that's really what we're looking at when we validate communities today. Would you all agree? Is there something missing here, maybe? We do. So engagement for us falls in, right, our three key pillars: acquisition, right, new members, we all know that, our engagement, what's interesting that they're coming back for, and then what is our retention rate? So once they're here, are they staying with the brand? Or are they going to, somewhere else because they're more interested in it? So engagement for us would be total interactions, our events and activities, our MAU, obviously, and then our average return visitor rate, and even UGC, right? Our user-generated content we definitely look at as one of our engagement metrics. All right, but now here we are, and we're looking at community everywhere. This is actually a slide that I presented to our CMO, my boss, last week, around the concept that we're trying to move toward, which is more around community are the people. Community is people, right? Community is where the people are. You've heard all of these things. I'm not the one to coin this phrase. It's in every kind of literature around this right now. But what does that mean? And so I wrote a list. These are the things that I think of where we are with community everywhere. And some of them we're using now, and some of them we're enhancing, and some of them we're moving even more toward. So tech platform, this is where we started. Before I joined Lenovo, came from a company where we ran an online platform for teachers who were connecting globally, who were teaching in the United States. And the tech platform was one that we owned, and I very much understand when people have either plugins or they are running a platform, but that's really been where we've been focused. UGC, our user-generated content, how people are liking it, how they're sharing it, what does that look like? How do we take that, if it's a comment or a thought or some kind of video that someone's uploaded, and how do we bring it into the space within our .com environment? How do we bring it into social? How do we bring it into other spaces where it makes sense? We talked a little bit about loyalty, right? I mean, you all run some sort of points contests or things that bring people in, but these are all the spaces, events, hybrid, online, offline. I have some geos that don't necessarily support in-person events, and I have other geos where I have one community manager who literally is at an event or running an event for Japan every week, and really proud of the work she's doing there. But what does that look like for you? And should we lean into this more with community everywhere, or should we not? I don't know. Influencers, hot topic, people get paid. We all know what an influencer is and how they make money. How does that fit into community? Lots of different ways, and so I'm interested in how you're using this in your space too, and that's gonna be part of our discussion. We put it on .com, so that's our digital platform. And again, where is it appropriate to surface that? Is it in a transactional post-purchase email? You've bought something from us, everyone's gotten the email, you've bought something, and then they tell you to buy the same product or another product, when really you just want to have know more about something that's of interest around the product or how to use it. So what does that look like in an artful way? SEO and SEM, you're all familiar with that. We don't use SEM really in the community, but we do use SEO for backlinking, and it's done pretty well. And then this part, this is really one of the other places, and I don't have Reddit on here, but it's another one that we've used in the past to grow our communities, where we take different key topics or discussion groups, and we move them into these other parallel marketing platforms at no cost, but just to start more conversation. And to me, this, especially in gaming, but I will say in education and SMB also, is where we've leaned into with a lot of success. So this is my list. That may mean something to you. You may be like, that's basic. I'd like everyone to turn to each other and talk about, what's your list? What's missing from here? Does this match? Is this even a concept you want to continue with? Where are you going to lean into? So first of all, let's just talk about, what is your list? This will take 2 minutes, and then I'll have you share. right, so hopefully you've all had a minute. Yeah, we're good? All right. All right, fantastic. Okay, good. All right, so hopefully you've all had a minute to share with one another. Does everyone know this trick? It's been a while. Okay, all right. I use this sometimes. I'm also an adjunct at UNC Chapel Hill in their School of Education. So see, this one always tends to work a little bit. All right, so hopefully you've had a minute to share with one another. If my list is like really off base, or you're like, no, that kind of feels right, but here's where else we are, I want to hear that. So share with one another.
We have, yep.
Hi, I'm Vince. Oh, does this work? Yeah. Hey, I'm Vince. You mentioned that you're doing education as well as part of your company there, and we run a lot of educational. In fact, that's a lot of what we do in our company, run education. And I'm just curious. Anyway, my question was building community within. You're a professor. You know, I have the same kind of background.
I'm a professor-ish. I'm an adjunct.
Yeah, you're building community in the courses, in the online courses.
Yeah, yeah.
So I would say that was
Yep.
missing from my list.
I like that one a lot. Yeah, I think building education into the communities in whatever vertical that is. So whether it's even indie gamers and how are they learning to build games, or if it's micro-credentialing and badging within our education community or in our SMB community, like what matters to you, you're taking a Microsoft course and you're also going to get a certification for that. I think that's a really interesting concept, and I really like the way you're thinking about it. It's a really tough one, and so I'd love to learn how you're doing that, but that's a good one. Thank you.
Two.
Okay. I can't see you, but I can hear you. Okay.
To echo, I also mentioned kind of like the help article or like a knowledge base. Obviously, people learn very differently, and so I think that's also part of like community everywhere. It's like tone in articles.
I like that a lot. We do have libraries of articles, and we're figuring out how do we break those into snackable content and sprinkle it throughout the customer decision journey and really pull that into more of the environment in ways that are meaningful, but still keeping those longer form pieces of content within the community platform so people can go back and reference it, or we have share outs. They can do that on either social or with friends or whomever. So I love that, and that's definitely missing from the list.
We've got one more over here, Jessica.
Yeah.
In-person meetups was the one that would be missing. So not
no.
necessarily like big like events. I would maybe some would categorize as that, but more small in-person synergy groups in our case is that's what we do.
I love that you brought that up, because when I say events, and I was talking about Mari and the events she's running in Japan, those actually are super user meetups. And some of them, there's 2 people, and some of them, there's 20 people. But there's value in every single one of those interactions, and sometimes we have product experts come in, and sometimes there's no product, it's just talking about what matters to them as small and medium business. So thank you for honing in on the exact events, because you're right, we're not all gonna run CMXs. Well, maybe you are, I'm not.
Got one here.
Enabling community members to speak in their own language, so supporting UGC with multilingual solutions so they can...
Completely agreed. Yeah. Yeah, translation services are really interesting in community as well. I mean, anyone I talk to, and my lovely counterparts at Bev, know this too, how do we take in all the languages? Do you have a language pack? If you don't have a language pack, hey, this was great, thank you so much, but I've got other countries. And then also, what are your translation services on the fly, right? One of the ways we originally designed our communities was by country first, then segment. And now we are redoing that as we think about what the best user experience and customer journey is, and that and community member just overall what matters to you. And so they'll be done by segment, where you designate your country and automatically populate it in, or the languages that you are most native to you or that you prefer. And those will come in and kind of have a different kind of synergy. So it is more of a global community rather than how we have them set up in global localities, but not as one under an umbrella. All right, well, that was great. Thank you for sharing.
We have one
more. Yeah,
more.
one more, yeah.
Hello. So it's futuregames.ru. Maybe you heard about it?
Okay, no.
It's happening in Russia, and basically it's getting sponsored by the government and all that. The idea is they mix simulation of the games, computer games like FIFA, soccer games, racing games.
Okay.
And teams, after competing on the computer, they switch into competing in the real life. And the teams from South America, like it's international competition when they mix.
That's very cool. I like that very much. I wrote a note, so I'll check it out. I'm not the gaming expert for sure, but my team definitely is. All right, next thing I just wanted to go into a little bit was thinking about your strategy. So we just have a few minutes left, and in this next few minutes, I want you to think a little bit about what does this mean to you, and what might you amplify that you hadn't necessarily been thinking about prior to today or prior to yesterday with Richard, or just in general as you're reading through Community Everywhere. You know, tech, platform, and features and function, right? I mean, I'm going to be really honest, for Community Everywhere, I know it's not just focused on the platform, but also thinking about where else is everyone. I'm not letting that go. That's huge. That's how we also, that is a space that people are coming back to at over 50% return rate. So we want to keep staying there too, because it matters to them. But in addition, meeting them in other spaces. Second thing is the internal stakeholder mind shift. And I'm going to tell a really quick story about this one. When I was interviewing at Lenovo, they had me interview with 5 executives who have incredible careers and I admire greatly. And one of them happens to run our largest geo. And he said to me, I hate this idea of community. I don't know why we're bringing you on to do this. Tell me why I should even invest in you. And I was like, I nailed these other 3, and now here we are on 4. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And they also had them stacked, you know, when they stacked the interviews. This one was stacked, so by interview 4, I was like, kind of in my stride, but also really like, am I hitting this, or am I exhausted, or what's going on? So we get to the 4th one, and I said, all right, well, and I won't say the name, but I said, you know, I don't want your money. Don't invest in me. Don't invest. Don't give me your $1 to do this or your $10. Instead, hire me, let me do this, and then I want $100. And so here I am 3.5 years later, and he just also increased some investments in some of our loyalty programs. It's a little bit bold. I'm not recommending that as an interview strategy at all. It's not why I'm here. But it was definitely the one to say, how do we switch mindset? And sometimes it's a little bit of a tough approach. Sometimes it's something that is a little bit softer, right? Like, I know you, Social Center of Excellence, or whomever you are, your social media people, you run this, tell us your expertise, but then also let's think about what community means here. And you know, also, I'll say this in internal stakeholder mindset too. When I had to run this presentation through corporate comms, one of the key areas of feedback that came was, you know, you're using community very loosely. We have lots of definitions of community here. And I think you need to really define community before you go into this space. And I really appreciated the feedback. But I also have to say, this is a community conference, and that's exactly what we're all trying to figure out. And the whole presentation is around redefining community in its own aspect. So I will, you know, fully own that one. And then overall, just the on and offline hybrid CX, right? Like, what is that going to look like? You know, for us, it does mean leaning into some of those meetups and leaning into places we know are successful and seeing how we can turnkey that in some of the other countries where we have work and we have communities. But also what it means for us is we did add in Bevy as our tool. We're really excited about it. And I think it's a great way to test out, how do we get more people interacting with one another? Because we are not the experts. We're just here to facilitate and to make sure that we're leading them to places that make sense. Very much like we're all here and we're having conversations with one another. So this is kind of how I see it. I would love if you want to connect after this, you know, in any ways that you see it. And you know, I think there's some three key questions we didn't get to today, but to think about, and I'm happy to send them to you if you want. But really, how do you get to the North Star of community everywhere, right? How do you define your own strategy? How do these buckets, or do they apply to your communities, or are there other buckets we should consider? Are we missing something? What are they? Why are they there? And if not, then maybe I'm right on the right track and we're okay. And then how are we going to validate some of this? So I think there's a few parts to this that are kind of moving pieces that we're all thinking about all the time. But I would love to hear from you because I'm just one voice. All of your voices matter greatly, and I'd really love to know what you think. So with that, thank you very much for having me. thank you for the opportunity, and it was really great to meet all of you.